Welcome, students and future logicians. Today we're just going to go over a couple of the main types of inductive arguments, talk about the standards for induction, and also the laws of logic, and we'll also discuss logical possibility. So an inductive argument, unlike a deductive one, is one wherein the premises offer probabilistic support to the conclusion, and the conclusion is ampliative, meaning that it contains more information than offered solely in the premises. So what this means is that if we do a good induction and it preserves the truth, then we know more than we knew before we induced or inferred from induction. So here's two quick examples of inductive arguments. CNN said that the roof collapsed on the remaining survivors, killing all four. Therefore, they must have all died. Second one, the water isn't coming out of the faucet. The pipes must have frozen last night when the temperature plummeted. So those are two examples of inductions. When we're evaluating inductive reasoning, we're going to evaluate it as essentially either strong or weak, okay? Unlike necessary reasoning, wherein if it's valid reasoning, if the premises are true, the conclusion must be necessarily so. For this, there's more of a scale, a sliding scale that exists. So some arguments are weaker than other arguments. Some arguments are stronger than others. It's not either it is valid or it is not. So a weak argument is one wherein the truth of the premises do not make the truth of the conclusion probable. Thus, a strong one is one wherein the truth of the premises make it likely that the conclusion is true. So again, ideally what we're evaluating is we're evaluating different types of arguments. We did deduction last lecture, and for induction, we're evaluating on truth preservation given that the inferential link is probabilistic. So it's a cogent argument if it's a strong inductive argument with all true premises. Thus, an uncogent argument is an inductive argument with either at least one false premise or one that is simply a weak argument. So again, we're going to go through the list. Normally, I want you to eliminate in the order in which I introduce. So the first one that you want to eliminate out of different types of inductive arguments is a prediction. Okay. So prediction is simply many different types and forms of predictive reasoning, but the way that you can tell it's a prediction is that the conclusion has a future contingent. So what that means is if conclusion makes a claim about what will occur or be the case in the future. That's what we call future contingent. Contingent meaning could be true, could be false. So here's an example. The tide is higher during a full moon, and when there is a storm, therefore a higher than usual tide will occur during tomorrow's full moon. So in English, we often use the word will to indicate a claim about the future. We also use language like tomorrow, or a month from now. So language specifically about increments of time, or time subjective from right now. Next are causal inferences. Causality is inferred, meaning that we come to conclusions about causality. We cannot, for example, just observe it from our eyes. What we observe is one event following another event or coexisting processes. Because causality has to do with invisible forces at work, with natural forces, biochemical, physical, material, we can think of many different ways, weather forces, things like that. Causal reasoning allows us to infer from likely causes to likely effects, or the other way, from likely effects to likely causes. So here's two examples. The brownies are undercooked, so they are gooey. So I want you to think for a minute, does this go from cause to effect or from effect to cause? Next one, the brownies didn't rise, thus they had not enough leavening. The next one is an argument from analogy. Analogical reasoning compares at least two things in the premises, pointing out similarities and concluding from that basis of comparison that they are similar in some additional way. So for analogical reasoning, look for words that indicate comparison, words like, as, is similar to, things like that. So here's an example. Firemen are like soldiers. You don't blame firefighters for the fire. One should not blame soldiers for the war. Next is inductive generalization. For this, what you're looking at is you're looking at a sample of a population to come to conclusions about that population. So the premises present evidence from a selected sample of a population to a conclusion about the group as a whole. For these, look for things like statistical reasoning, words that indicate study or polling, numbers, and percentages. So here's an example from a study released years ago. 10,000 men across the US were polled on how good looking they were compared to other men. 85% of respondents held that they were better looking than average. Thus, American men believe they're better looking than average. Finally, we'll talk about argument from authority. This one is the easiest to see formally, meaning by the arrangement of the parts. It will always have somebody says something, and then the conclusion will be that's something they said. So the evidence is based on the expertise or the word of the authority. So this type of argument claims that some statement is true because an authority, expert, or say eyewitness says that it is the case. Example, Marco testified that he saw the defendant shoot the victim, then get into her Trans Am and drive away. Therefore, the defendant shot the victim and left in her vehicle. So, given those types, prediction, causal inference, inductive generalization, argument from authority, and analogical reasoning, I want you to identify these different types of arguments. So here's the first one. Sea level is rising more rapidly along Virginia's shores than in most coastal areas. As the oceans and atmosphere continue to warm, sea levels along the Virginia coast are likely to rise. And God, I'm sorry. I'm reading my own typos as I'm reading aloud. I apologize. So here, let me say this again. As the oceans and atmosphere continue to warm, sea level along the Virginia coast is likely to rise 16 inches to 4 feet in the next century. Okay, so which type of induction is that? Next one. By what evidence do I know, or by what considerations am I led to believe that the walking and speaking figures which I see and hear have sensations and thoughts, or in other words, possess minds? First, they have bodies like me, which I know in my own case to be the antecedent condition of feelings. And because secondly, they exhibit the acts and outward signs, which in my own case, I know by experience to be caused by feeling. So which type of induction is that one? Next one, Maya people cremated their rulers and used the ashes to help make rubber balls that were used in ball games, an archaeologist has claimed. The researcher and his team believe they found evidence of this practice while excavating the Maya city of Tonina. The theory about the rubber balls was put forward by Juan Yadun Angulo, an archaeologist of Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History. So which type of induction was that? Fourth, equal property splits in divorce make men richer and women substantially poorer in California. In this study of 3,000 divorces by a Stanford University research group, this study demonstrated that on average, men had a 42% higher standard of living after the divorce, and women and children got by on 73% lower standard of living. Number 5, the vast majority of Super Bowl games have been played in freezing cold weather. Therefore, probably the next Super Bowl game will be played in freezing cold weather. Next, Max forgot to bring the plant in overnight. The temperature plummeted to below zero, and the plant shows signs of frost and is no longer alive. Leaving the plant out overnight likely killed the plant. Okay, now we're just going to talk about the foundations of logic and logical relations. So I just want to start with the concept of truth here. True propositions are simply those which are true in the actual world, and false ones are those which are false in the actual world. A possibly true proposition is one which is true in at least one possible world. Okay? So possible worlds is a philosophical concept that allows you to consider what follows from a set of assumptions rather than what is the case. So we can both, well, possible worlds, we can also consider what is actually the case, but we can also think of things that aren't the case and imagine a situation, a world in which that one thing is altered, but everything else remains the same. And that's what we would call a possible world. So when we're using the word possibly, logically, we mean it this way. So a logically possible proposition is simply one that can be asserted without implying a logical contradiction. So, for example, if I say a major flood will occur in Charleston in the next 10 years, logically possible. This square has sides that are 4 inches long, logically possible. Okay. Logically impossible propositions purport states of affairs that violate the laws of logic and are therefore inconsistent or self-contradictory. For example, M and D are taller than each other. Okay, so taller than is an asymmetrical relation. Thus, we can't say that two people are both taller than each other. So what exactly are laws of thought or laws of logic? Well, we can think about them internally as how representations must work internally, but we can think about them also externally as how representations work, okay? So the first law of logic, what Leibniz calls the first negative truth, is the law of the excluded middle. This says, I called it the first negative, sorry, the first positive law. Everything is or is not. So for all things, it is either the case or it is not the case. The next is the law of non-contradiction. This is the first negative law. When we use the word negative in logic, we just mean not, okay? The concept of negation. Nothing both is and is not. So I can't assert, okay, something is and is not the case at the very same time. For all things, it is not the case that both it is and is not simultaneously. The last one has to do with identity. I want you to think of identity. We have to think of it as like identify, like recognize. But what identity has to do with is what we are recognizing, okay? And what we are recognizing is unity, okay, often across time and across different spaces, okay? So identity has to do with unity, and unity is nothing but consistency or the recognition of consistency. So identity is reflexive. Reflexive is that it is in a particular relation to itself, okay? In fact, it is identical to itself, okay? So everything is identical or equal to itself. That's the reflexive quality of identity. So I am me, you are you. Mark Twain is Mark Twain. Now I want to talk about symmetry as a logical relation. Identity is also symmetrical. For symmetry, if P equals Q, then Q equals P. And if Q equals P, then P equals Q. So you can think of it as like mirror reflections, if you want to think of symmetry like that. Last is transitivity. This says that if P equals Q and Q equals R, that implies necessarily that P equals R. Okay. So in this way, we have identity having the fundamental logical relations, okay, of reflexivity, something is identical to itself. Symmetry, if something is identical to that thing is also identical to it. And transitivity, if something is identical to that thing and that thing is identical to something else, okay, then the relation of identity transfers between the primary thing P and the tertiary thing R. So I want you to practice for a second conceptualizing things as reflexive, transitive, or symmetrical. Okay, so first let's talk about the relationship of liking. Is liking reflexive? In other words, does a person necessarily like themselves? Next, the relationship of A liking B. Is this a transitive one? So if A likes B and B likes C, is it necessarily the case that A likes C? Finally, we'll see if liking is a symmetrical relation. So if A likes B, is it necessarily the case that B likes A? Okay, a little bit harder, and I want you to try to come up with counterexamples for each of these cases, just to make sure that you're testing, creating example cases for yourself to test these. So the relationship of A is biologically related to B, is a transitive one, true or false? Okay, in other words, if A is biologically related to B, and B is biologically related to C, then is A necessarily biologically related to C? Last one, the relationship of A is biologically related to B is symmetrical. So if A is biologically related to B, is it the case that B is necessarily biologically related to A? Okay, so for this, hopefully, and you can test your objectives, learning objectives here. Can you define and identify the major types of inductive arguments? Can you define and identify what cogency, weakness, and strength for inductive arguments is? Can you identify the main laws of logic and logical relations and define logical possibility?